G'day, everybody. Brian here from quantlabs.net. Just wanted to go over a very important question I think most of you might be asking. Okay, this can be found on Stack Exchange, Quant section here, quant.stackexchange.com. And the question was, what makes Python better suited to quant finance than Matlab, Octave, Julia, R, and others? This one I could specifically answer on because I've worked with all the languages. Not a developer. All my scripts are in Octave, open source version of Matlab. Seems that Python is the way to go. So one thing he says, he's not a developer. Okay, fair enough. As I'm not a developer, I do not like change for the sake of change if the end result is the same. Generally like to know why everything seems to be written in Python now, what makes Python better than Octave and or Matlab, Julia, and R. You can obviously throw in there, is it scalable? um, Availability of more packages, yes. Is it or is it unpopular idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy and therefore gain a momentum of its own other resources? Okay, so here's some bizarre languages I don't know and don't care to know. I'll need to learn giraffe or a bumblebee in say 5 years. I don't know. I don't think those are meaningful. I don't even know those languages. I've seen quite a few popular languages over the year. The only constant seems to be C, C++, which I regret not learning. So he's not a developer, but he's willing to learn C++. Now, again, it depends upon this person's goal. If they're trying to get into the field of C++ as a quant, let's say, yeah, that's where you go. Again, I keep saying you'll go in and get a lot of high compensation, but you got to be the best of the best. I prefer R over Python. Controlling data seems to be much more intuitive in the former. Yeah, I would agree. But everything does come down to data wrangling. MATLAB's really no different. I think the question is opinion based, by the way. In fact, that's precisely the question. Surely there must be metrics that makes Python the language of choice. Not a MATLAB or Julia expert. I've never really worked with Julia, and that was supposed to be the Python killer. It really hasn't seems to be getting anywhere. I've not seen any jobs in Julia. There might be an odd one, but um, not generally out there, especially when you're going up against, applicants of 1,200 to 3,000 per job. But the advantages I see in Python are vectorization, whether it's NumPy, Pandas, or other packages that have been optimized array methods that do not require the coder to utilize loops. That is very true about Python. I will admit that as well. And they call that being Pythonic. I'm not an expert, but MATLAB is actually optimized for matrix and array operations. Yeah, it is. Now, forget Octave. Okay, Octave is a derivative and trying to be a derivative of MATLAB, but MATLAB itself is light years ahead of anything I've seen. It's commercial, meaning you got to pay for it. And the more functions you need, the more throughput you need out of MATLAB, the more you pay, and it can get very expensive. Now, there's a couple of good comments here I find. Um, okay, so we have a very good comment from Ernie Chan here that's been posted. Um, and then we have this one as well. So let's start with this one, a corporate perspective. This is very important, okay? Especially when you go into the world of trading firms, high frequency trading firms, hedge funds, and the like. May answer the question. I'm not an expert in technical difference between Python, Julia, or MATLAB. I can provide some corporate observations. So this is coming from this guy Pleb. Now I think I remember this guy before, and he's got some really good answers here. So he might be a manager, or recruiter in the field. Back end developers possess knowledge of Python and can easily understand its syntax because it's easy. Few are familiar with MATLAB or Julia. Some have experience with R. Makes it more efficient for the entire business when front office algorithms are written in Python, as backend developers can seamlessly translate them into optimized C++ or C# code for the production pipeline. So essentially, all your trading systems are going to be most likely home built. within the firm. Not so many firms use third-party trading platforms, but I could be wrong on that. I do know of one that's out Deltix, but they've struggled in the corporate world. Look at Quantopian's another example. I think Quant Connect's struggling. So all the third-party platforms out there might not be the wisest unless you're a retail trader. And so C++ is now going into the enterprise level, um, which is the same as saying corporate. C++ is usually the granddaddy of them all. It's just how it is. Since a lot of these firms are older, being founded, let's say 20 years ago, they're going to be using C++ and stay in C++. That's why it's popular. Um, Backend development work in sprints as part of the Scrum methodology with each task. Allocate a specific number of days, but uh, based on its complexity. If an algorithm is written in Julia or R, additional time and effort required for the backend developers to understand the code, leading to potential delays and frustration. So there you go. That's a pretty good answer on why Python is the standard, and it's safe to say that Python is the language for prototyping, especially when you're looking at the Jupyter notebook capabilities with that. MATLAB's very good at that as well, but again, you got to pay for that functionality. But with Jupyter, a lot of it's open source, meaning it's free. I mean, this might also translate more meetings with front office traders who develop the algorithm, ultimately cost due to inefficiency. And I guess those are very, very valid points. Very valid. Let me just close once again. Okay, continuing along. All right, so that's a very good reason. Regards to discussion of Julia or MATLAB over Python. Algorithms where performance is of importance. We employ a team of experienced C++ developers. C++ is renowned for its speed and popular choice for high performance applications. For a long time, it is the result of larger job market of skilled C++ developers. Another very valid um, point, because there's more developers out there in C++, especially now in this market. A lot of them are being laid off from big firms and big tech and the like. Popular simple syntax, Python, simple syntax, so anybody can really quickly learn it, even 5-year-olds. So it's really accessible to all programmers throughout the business. And I think Goldman Sachs, was it JP Morgan, or I think it's JP Morgan, or one of them is now requiring all analysts to know Python, not just Excel anymore. It's Python. And not just that, but remember, Microsoft even enabled an Excel where you can execute Python scripts from within Excel itself. So that's how big it's across the corporate enterprise world. So again, larger job market, skilled developers, larger pool of developers with understanding of Python compared to Julia R and MATLAB. This makes the recruitment and replacement easier and more efficient. People never thought of this. Reduce corporate costs, lower because Python's popular and simpler, enhances efficiency. Larger job market requires that finding and replacing developers more straightforward, and same with C++. So again, then there's the naysayers that come in. Let's see if it's a naysayer. Could be a chicken and egg thing. I agree with you regarding popularity. Larger pool of skilled developers and reduced corporate costs. Not sure I agree. Simpler syntax through, from what I've seen, little MATLAB Octave is not that much easier or harder than Python. I would say Python's easier to learn, but MATLAB has just got more power to it. It's easier to use once you master MATLAB and the M language. Their documentation's pretty stellar as well. Python general purpose language. System correlates better with other programming languages, contrary to statistical programming languages like MATLAB, R. Developer having experience with JavaScript or C would have less issues understanding Python versus a MATLAB script. Because the thing is with MATLAB, there's a lot of power that goes on behind the scenes with MATLAB that you don't have to worry about. So as I said in another video today, is that the GPU side is just 3 lines to set up a MATLAB pool of GPU. Even on their cloud, you can just do it within a few lines. To code that up in something like C++ is obviously a lot harder. And then we get the guy, buy, sell, or sell set. I think it's right across the industry. Anyways, now this is Ernie Chan, and he's pretty well used all three, I think. And I know he teaches in one of these. Yeah, in R. Okay, so in MATLAB, this is where I know him personally, and I've known him for 10 plus years. A lot of his prototyping has always been in MATLAB. And remember, he's coming from the enterprise level. So used to be one of the most common backtesting platforms used by quant analysts and traders in large institutions. It's been taken over by Python, which I will describe below. Most productive language for quants as to professional software developers. Easier to use than Python, faster, and it has a full customer support from the vendor. So again, when vendor, that means you're paying for this. Ideal for trading strategies that involve a large portfolio of stocks, and it's designed for that as well. You can, within few lines, you can do a full-on analysis of stock analysis, let's say, and use the data source within 1 line or two with higher profile languages like KDB or whatnot. Has numerous statistical and mathematical modules built in, so traders do not have to reinvent the wheel if their trading algos involve some sophisticated but common math concepts. Also, a huge number of third-party freeware available. Again, that's very true. Not sure how it is now, uh, currently, but there was a lot of good samples of MATLAB code out there. Many of them very useful for quant trading purposes. MATLAB is very useful in retrieving financial information from various sites. I cannot argue with that as well. So here is what he's talking about Python. So you can see that would have been Ernie Chan to 10, 12, 15 years ago. Now he's doing Python. So now Python's taken over MATLAB, the de facto backtesting language. And again, I keep saying about Tradingview, you don't even need to worry about backtest because it's all built in. That's Tradingview. You can manipulate arrays, time series like you do in MATLAB. Python benefits from large number of third-party packages, which are the good thing is that they're open source. Specific applications, Scikit for basic machine learning. I'd say it's basic. A Plotly for interactive data visualization, Seaborn for plotting, just to name a few. Python has almost any package you need in finance and trading, is not without flaws. So if you want the slick, when they say flaws here about Python, then that's where you move into MATLAB. If that's what you want, and you're willing to pay. So let's talk about R from the perspective of R of Ernie Chan. So R is a language for teaching my financial risk and analyst course at Northwestern University Master in Data Science program. Covers everything from time series to copulas. Copulas are cool, and I do know MATLAB. Man, the copulas uses of MATLAB is very good for that visually, and again in a very few set of lines. It's a great language if you want to use classic statistical and economic metric analysis for your trading. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, again, this is all about research with R, so it's hard to uh, take that code and then re-implement it into C. You can kind of do that. I played with it, but the problem is it's not efficient. That's because many academic statisticians and econometricians have implemented their algorithms in R. There aren't many implementations of machine learning in Python. There's not as many as Python or MATLAB. I recommend you do not use machine learning if you're creating a new trading strategy. There you go. So that means as machine learning comes into play, and it's pretty well out there now, do not use R. Use ML only for improving your strategy. The reasons explained in chapter 2 in the more depth of Predict Now in this firm. R is a good language for the initial setup of strategy exploration, though not as good as MATLAB since its IDE. R Studio is also free and I dare say primitive. True. Well, that's any open source because, as I said, the word to use for MATLAB, it's slick. It's very slick. The documentation is stellar. You can get high-end documentation even on the world of Quant in within Matlab documentation. Naturally, Python also comes with zero support, unless you're going to get criticized by the academics that use R. But don't forget, they're not traders. They're just doing it for research. And they can experiment all they want because they got a nice salary from their university. Yeah, exactly my thoughts regarding MATLAB. Octave is open source and has less support. Yeah, you can't deny that. But a great set of packages and the same functionality. Bit perplexed why it's underutilized. Because there's Python. Simple as that. Anyways, that's pretty well it. As I said, if you want to kind of hit a more vast world, be up to running faster, go to my site, quantlabsnet.com, and get in on our Tradingview course that we've got. And that course going to give you the 3 steps for free. If you're into that, I'll be putting that out very soon. But you'll immediately get the 45-minute view to showcase why Tradingview is the best way to analyze things and to implement strategies right away. And even with one of my methodologies, using a service that you don't have to worry about coding to be fully auto trading using the vast data available on TradingView. And it's so cheap to use each to pay for each month. That's just my opinion. That's what I'm using now. Hopefully I'll help you out. Thanks for watching.